Welcome to another edition of the Always Be Testing podcast. I'm your host, Ty DeGrange, and I am just slightly excited to talk to a good friend, Andrew Covato, today. What's up, Andrew?
What's up, Ty? Thanks for having me on here. And I have to say, I love the podcast name, Always Be Testing. I can't tell you how many times I've said those exact words in various roles. So you have knocked it out of the park with that framing of the material here. So I'm excited to get into it, man.
Love it, man. Appreciate it. And I'm just going to throw out more compliments. Your new firm, is it Growth Science? Is that right?
Growth by science. We grow
Growth by
using
Science.
science. Yes, sir.
I have to just throw a compliment your way also. I feel like we're of a similar mindset because the naming on that is stellar in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Love science, man. It's a passion. And I think that it is, testing and science go hand in hand. I think we're definitely going to get into that. So
Absolutely.
excited to talk about that.
Love it. Love it. So for folks that don't know, Andrew is kind of a badass and a great guy and very scientific in what how he's approached things and how he's approached ad tech and growth. He has worked on the buy side and the sell side of various ad platforms. He's got a ton of measurement experience, a ton of data experience, a ton of team building experience, and with some brands that maybe you've heard of, Netflix, Snap, Google, eBay, Meta, just a few to name. No big deal.
Yeah, I've had a lot of great fortune, a lot of great companies to work for. So I'm really grateful for all those experiences.
Heck yeah, man. So maybe like to kick things off to make it super easy for folks to understand kind of what you do. Maybe could you share if the audience was a fifth grader, what do you do?
Yeah, great question. And it's always hard to articulate, such a nuanced topic like ads measurement, but we'll give it a go here. You know, uh, Companies want to sell their products and services. And in order for them to sell their products and services, they need to talk about their products and services and share them and inform people that these things exist and that they can be bought. And so they spend money to have their products and services be put in front of people that they think will potentially buy their products. So what I do primarily is help those companies understand if the money that they're spending on promoting their products and services are actually resulting in people buying things that they would not have bought otherwise, that they would not have bought except for the fact that they saw those ads. And so that's really what it kind of boils down to. It boils down to ROI, but specifically to get a little bit outside of the fifth grader into the jargon world, I focus specifically on incremental ROI and figuring out how to calculate that. And so there's a lot of math and methodology that goes along with it, and a lot of technology that goes along with it as well. And then, believe it or not, a lot of politics, especially as it comes to talking about how to implement and how to change the perspective on media buying. There's a lot of politics involved in that too. So it's weirdly a specific niche area that has, I think, actually broader economic implications.
For sure, for sure. I love this because it's something that comes up so often for people engaging in ad buying we've seen this explosion of digital where everything can be measured and people get super excited about that. Yet, unfortunately, as you and I know, just so many brands actually do it wrong, are chasing the wrong things, are seeing that um, you know, they're either fretting about a lot of that spend not being incremental and not maybe be able to act on it almost to a fault. Some of them are able to actually get it right, and so many just don't have the visibility that they want. And there's partners and internal and external teams that don't always see it, nor can they act on it. So for you to be able to talk about it, educate people about it, cut through the noise is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think visibility. You mentioned that. It's really interesting because I think there's a trade-off with having access to more data. In a lot of ways, inspires people to do dumb things when it comes to measurement. And I'm sure this will come up a lot in our discussion. But privacy and a lot of the changes with regulatory changes and OS changes like ATT have sort of killed a lot of the data accessibility that marketers enjoyed in the past. I thought that that would result in people kind of going to more smart measurement methodologies and tooling and things like that. And it has to a certain extent, but I don't think we've evolved as much as I think we could evolve. And so really what I'm trying to do today is help move that along a little bit and encourage more platforms, marketers, really the whole ecosystem to lean into some of these more appropriate methodologies versus things that maybe won't give you the right visibility into that ROAS or to that incremental ROAS, incremental ROI.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe a good segue, what are you seeing as some of those things that people are getting wrong about incrementality testing or that incremental ROI that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that they're getting wrong is they're not doing it. So there's still a SKAd network, last touch, anything that's kind of a post exposure attribution. So what I mean by that is you look to assign credit to a marketing channel based on a touch point that a user has had and a subsequent conversion, and you're assigning credit based on that pathway. That's, first of all, pretty broken in a post ATT world. App tracking transparency, for those who aren't super familiar with that, which is basically Apple's way of shutting down the ability to make those path to conversion connections. And so there's anybody that's looking at post exposure is not doing incrementality. That's number one. Now, for those that are doing incrementality, I think a lot of people get kind of afraid that there's this opportunity cost, and so they kind of dip their toe in. They don't really go all in on it. They maybe do a test here and there. There isn't a lot of structure around it. Maybe they're trying a lot of different tools and kind of switching tools and this and that. I think it's really important to pick a tool, pick a methodology, stick with it, invest the time, have a structured testing approach, and really, not dabble in it a little bit, but you make it the center of your marketing program and the center of how you assess the performance of your marketing. It's
Love
not
that.
something that you can it's not an afterthought, and it's not easy to do. And so it shouldn't be an afterthought, but really getting the organization around that culture of testing and incrementality, that's the foundation of everything. And then, those other things that I said, the structured learning agenda and commitment to the testing sort of follows from that. But if you don't have that foundation and you don't have buy-in from leadership, and people are doubting that that's even a good place to start, you're
Hmm.
kind of you've lost before you've even gotten off the ground.
Well said, well said. And maybe a good segue, talking about the Netflix experience a little bit and how you kind of built out that paid growth engine. You touched on so many interesting things there, like education, leadership, buy-in, alignment, culture of testing, but not to take the words out of your mouth, but like, how did you kind of approach that Netflix experience and your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I mean, Netflix was a phenomenal experience for me working there. It was the first time that I worked on the buy side in a big way. And everything that you mentioned, like everything that we were kind of talking about as it relates to incrementality, was totally at the core of what we were doing at Netflix. But first of all, I mean, Netflix, for those who don't know or aren't familiar, is inherently a very test heavy culture. They test everything, and I love it. It's if you read their culture doc, which is available online, and there's books written about it as well. But really, there's a lot of kind of solicitation of dissent, kind of the peer review process, which a lot of what I put into growth by science is our ethos. I've kind of borrowed from that, and taken the things I've loved from that. But yeah, there's this great culture of being scientific, and I don't think they actually call it out, but there's testing, there's updating your priors with new information, soliciting dissent, disagreeing and committing. There's all those kind of themes that relate back to being a scientist and having a scientific mindset that are at the core of Netflix. And that's why, taking that cultural foundation, translating into the marketing side, it was the best possible petri dish to develop a really truly scientific paid growth program. And so, I still believe that to this day, I still think Netflix is one of, if not the top performance marketer that exists out there from a sophistication perspective. And what we built was what I would say it should be the North Star for all performance marketers out there. And of course, Netflix is going to have tons of bells and whistles, and I'll mention a little bit of what that kind of looked like. But this general direction of what they've done is, I think, what a lot of all growth marketers, I think, should be aspiring to get as close to that as they can, given the resources and size. And so what we built there, we essentially had a cross-platform media buying tool, which we built bespoke in-house to the way that we were buying media, connected all with the APIs. It was, just as good, if not better, some of the tech that I've seen at agencies or, third-party buying platforms. And we had this all in-house. We had testing automation built into that. We had learning agendas that we would want to put forth to help guide our marketing decisions. And we had that built into the optimization and into the deployment engine. All of that fed back into our in-house our in-house measurement tooling, which was built by some of the smartest folks in industry. Funny enough, back then, what that entailed, what that measurement platform entailed, is a lot of what you see, a lot of the best incrementality tooling out there is sort of doing something similar. And some of that great tooling that's out there, a lot of it uses geotesting to inform an MMM, media mix model, that's more of an econometric model, can be always on without having holdouts. And so I think that's a fantastic set of tools for growth marketers to kind of look at. So all of this tied together, we had this feedback loop, and one of the most exciting things from that whole tech investment that we made and that great kind of MarTech stack and growth stack was that we got some fantastic insights about what worked and what didn't work. And a lot of it, was very surprising, and I would say antithetical to what platforms and sort of common knowledge growth principles were, and what the platforms were telling us to do. But it worked, and it goes to show you that if you invest in incrementality, you measure things from an incremental causal perspective, and you will find that the way that you buy media can be totally different from what's out there. And I happen to have a perspective, not solely informed on the work we did at Netflix, but really informed on all of the research that I've seen and that I've personally conducted, even with clients today at Growth by Science, on what a good approach to growth marketing is. And I think it's a lot simpler than what people think. So I'll tell you my principles. I mean, I think it's a good time. I'll just share them.
Yeah, drop them on us, baby. Let's go.
Great creative. Number one, you got to have great creative. It's got to be bespoke to the platform that you're using it. You got to nail your targeting and only rely on first-party targeting, right? A lot of the other targeting is sort of broken. Third-party data exchanging, all of that. To assume it's broken or will be broken soon enough. So rely on kind of platform targeting, especially if you're doing something like paid social. Optimize for reach and frequency. Don't look at any conversion optimization. This is a spicy one. I'm sure you're going to get some people that really come back and say, no, this dude's off his rocker. Yeah. But I can promise you, if you like last click and you like post exposure, then use conversion optimization. If you like incrementality, do not use any kind of conversion optimization. It does not drive incrementality in most cases. Not to say that it never does, and not to say that you can't get things to be incremental if you use it, but I would not start there. I would exhaust other options first, and then move to that if you're still not seeing incrementality. And
Can you
so,
double click on, not to interrupt you because you're
yeah,
on a roll here, but can you double click on the conversion rate optimization, just
yeah,
definition of that, because I think that could get
for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So not conversion rate opposite. I think if you're talking CRO, that's different. That's tweaking landing pages and stuff. So definitely do that. But as it relates to conversion optimized ad delivery, right, where you're passing feedback through a pixel or Cappy or something to an ad platform, and then the ad platform's using that to optimize. The way that the optimization systems work at these ad platforms, they optimize on a post-exposure basis, meaning the signal that they get back that they use as a feedback loop is, did somebody see an ad and then convert? Okay, that seems to make sense. Now the problem is, it's the delivery system is good at predicting people that will convert, and so you're showing ads to people that would convert anyway, and you're saying, okay, it works, I'm going to feed that back. And so that's why there's a lack of causality from these conversion optimization algorithms. And I've
Love
seen
it.
it time and time again. You put this thing out there, and there's, by the way, a lot of companies are putting research out that shows that the incrementality is here, the platform, ROAS is here, the incremental ROAS is way down here for all these conversion optimized products that are out there. And I've seen time and time again, you cut it off, you switch to something more generic, you switch to either engagement optimization or ideally reach and frequency, and you manage, the reach and the frequency, and you look at trying to get saturation into a target audience, and manage, kind of the delivery with that. It almost all the time will work better from an incrementality perspective than a conversion optimization perspective.
The, the
Which,
the the pitfalls of chasing that CAC and that CPA,
yep,
right? If
oh
people are
yeah,
overly dogmatic about that,
yes
they
sir.
could lose out on incrementality.
They could lose out. And the funny thing is, when you switch to that kind of reach and frequency style, what I just described, your CAC goes through the roof. Your last click CAC goes through the roof. And so people get freaked out. They go, "Oh, this ain't working." No, it's not working. It is actually giving you people that would not have converted had they not seen the ads, which is what you want. You don't want to show people ads who are already going to convert. You know, you want to selectively, ideally, you want to selectively show it to people who are kind of just on the threshold, but then have most of your budget not spent on people that are going to convert with only a little bit of. So it's actually the opposite of the way that conversion optimization or a conversion based optimization delivery works. You want to do the opposite of what it's doing.
Love that. Love that. You're on a roll. These principles are going to be tacked up on the wall at a number of places, I think, Andrew.
We'll see, man. We'll see. I'm sure somebody's gonna find something contentious to say about it.
There
But
may
I
be
welcome it.
some comments that
Yeah,
we welcome the discussion. That's part of being scientists, right?
absolutely. Yep. I welcome
Uh,
being proven wrong if somebody can show me data.
I love it. And maybe a good segue too. You've laid out some principles. You've talked Netflix, with Meta, Snap, and Google. Obviously, a ton of interesting learnings there. What can you share based on that experience?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway I have from all these ad platforms is sort of related to the principles, which is they're kind of a victim of their own success a little bit, right? This massive multi-hundred-billion-dollar digital marketing industry has been built on the back of post-exposure optimization and measurement. Because back, in the early days of search advertising, it actually worked, right? Like there was a good case to be made that if you clicked on an ad and then you converted, you probably converted because you clicked on the ad, because that's just the way the ecosystem was back then. It's gotten way more
Yeah,
complicated now, and that logic doesn't hold anymore. But you've got these big behemoth ad tech stacks that are built on that foundation, and you can't really pivot off of it if to do something more sophisticated, like say a more causal. Um, but there's also not a great motivation to do that, I would say, from the ad platform side. And not that this was ever explicitly talked about. This is me kind of just observing, right?
yeah.
But
I think I know
when
where
you're
you're going
making
with this one.
advertisers aren't demanding big changes in fundamental changes in the ad tech stack. In fact,
Yeah.
a lot of them are. demanding better last click measurement. Can we keep that alive in a post ATT world
Yeah.
and things like that?
My
And so
numbers look
it's
good. Look at all the revenue I'm in
yeah,
charge of.
exactly.
I can hire more. I can have more tools under my
There's a
belt.
whole there's a whole ecosystem built around that, and that's what makes it really hard for the ad tech platforms to move away from that. Not to mention, it's objectively a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, love it. You said something earlier in your principles that I think relates to the work you're doing with growth by science. I'd love to maybe double down on that concept of simplicity. We've talked about this a little bit, but can you share more about what does simplicity mean for you in what you bring to the table for your clients at Growth by Science?
Simplicity, I think, is super important, and it's a part of a lot of the culture docs and sort of approach that I've tried to bring to different places that I've worked, and even now in growth by science. One thing I really believe in is simplicity and specificity, and I think you can do a lot with really specific tests that are simple, that are kind of coarse grained. So I think a lot of marketers overestimate the complexity that's required to get value out of an incrementality test, and not that the setup for the test infrastructure and the tooling, yes, that can be very complicated, but the tests themselves, to get a lot of value out of them, you don't have to do anything crazy like some multivariate full factorial test where you've got this creative variant and this targeting and blah blah blah. Like, yes, there can be a place for tests like that, but you'd be surprised at how many marketers don't do basic tests like a full marketing program holdout test. Something like that can be hugely powerful. And in fact, that's a first test that whenever I am working with a growth marketing client that we run is a full marketing holdout across all digital marketing, ideally all marketing if it's not just digital, but at least across all digital. We do a holdback and we see what is the efficacy of the overall marketing program. And that can lead you down a couple of different paths, because if it's working, you don't need to make big changes to it, right? You just need to find out how to make it work better. But if it's not working, if it's below the ROI, the minimum acceptable ROI that you need, then you have to make some bigger tweaks. You have to potentially think about, well, let's shut down some channels. Let's see if there's any, kind of directional info about where we're bleeding and what's kind of bringing that incremental CAC up and what's pushing it forward. And so you can have almost like two different learning agendas, one that's more iterative if the overall program is working versus one that's more aggressive if it's not working. And I think something like that is a great place for most people to start. Is just with that concept.
I love that. I love that. And when you say holdout, Andrew, are you talking about like a geo holdout or a segment holdout?
Yeah, in this day and age, geo holdouts are the best, and in some cases, the only way that you can really do a cross-channel incrementality test, which is what you need to do. And so I'm a big fan of geo holdouts. There's a lot of great tools out there that can help you with that. You can also, there's open source, open source tooling out there as well that you can use. And I've done pretty sophisticated geo holdouts just in Excel and the analysis just in Excel. So it's, you don't have to be you don't have to invest in a big fancy tool to get this stuff done. You can do a lot of it in a pretty hacky way and get a pretty good answer out of it anyway. So
Yeah, and I just want to tout, like, I think what you're kind of attempting to do with growth by science, and there's just so much learnings and power and experience in what you've achieved and thought of and been through. And I feel like you're kind of distilling it down into these, simple principles for a lot of teams to take advantage of with growth by science in a way that doesn't require as much bloat and cost as I think some people try to approach it with. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can always start small. A lot of this stuff is really easy to start small with, and it can grow to be complicated. And you can build a really sophisticated thing like what I described with Netflix and build that tech and that feedback loop. But you don't have to start there, especially if you're a smaller advertiser. In fact, a lot of one mistake I see a lot of advertisers do that are kind of in just getting started and maybe not in call it, let's say, 7-figure a year sort of ad spend, or even a little bit less. They try to spread that around too many different platforms. That's totally unnecessary. Pick two or even just one platform that you feel aligns with the audience that you're trying to reach, and get started there. Spend a little bit less. You concentrate your spend in smaller areas, smaller geos, see how it works. And you'll end up learning a lot more if you approach your growth marketing like that versus something right out the gate that's just spreading dollars across multiple platforms, but not getting a ton of saturation into the different segments and markets that you're approaching. You're not going to learn what's working and what isn't working. I think the key is to find something that you can hang your hat on that is driving incrementality, and then build off of that. And start small and build exponentially. Like once you're driving incrementality in an ROI positive capacity, even if it's just on one platform, guess what? You can reinvest that money, and you can be confident that it's not wasted dollars. It's dollars that you've earned and you've re-earned from doing something in a smart way. And so I think that's a great approach for especially for smaller marketers.
Yeah, I love it. It echoes like a lot of times what we see, look under the hood of a company. It's just amazing how much money we can save them and how many things we can rebuild for their benefit that are just a little bit smarter. Um, so kind of wrapping up, I know you have to hop, Andrew, but what are some of the biggest mentors or sources of inspiration for you? You've achieved so much in your career and bring a lot to the table. What are some that have inspired you?
I said this before, but I'll reiterate it because I do think it. Every time I reflect on it, I think I realize another way in which it's influenced my career. But I think the culture at Netflix, and not all of it, by the way, there were certain parts of it that didn't, fully jive with the way that I, like to approach work. But a lot of the kind of language and approach to experimentation, disagree and commit, those kind of principles, freedom and responsibility. Disagree and commit is not a Netflix one, but there's those, the same kind of ideas that are pervasive in it. But freedom and responsibility, context not control. These are sort of some of their principles, and all of the everything around testing and the general testing culture. I think is really shaped a lot of the way that I've approached not just technical challenges and kind of products and strategies that I've built, but I think some of the softer skill type principles also shaped my management style. And at Snap, I was leading a pretty big team, the measurement team globally, which had a bunch of sub teams, and I really loved applying some of those principles, at least the ones that resonated with me, and we kind of made them our own and adapted them to the Snap culture, which is kind, smart, and creative. And I think it worked out really well. I think there's a lot of portability to some of those principles, and I really hope to apply the what we built over at Snap from a culture perspective, as well as the Netflix stuff into subsequent roles and into future kind of cultural opportunities.
I love that one comment you had earlier in the pod about soliciting dissent. Is that what you said?
Yeah, soliciting dissent. Yeah, again,
What a
not
great one.
explicitly. It's not explicitly a Netflix one, but it is. It's again built in there, and it is. I think it's so important as a scientist. Like if you look at in the scientific community, there's this concept of peer review, right? And that's literally solicitation of dissent. Here's my study. Here's my paper. Tell me what I did that was wrong. What did I miss? What do I have the blinders on for, right? And people will go in there and shred it basically, right? And that's just going to make your hypothesis and your experiment that much stronger. And I don't think enough people do that because it can be frankly a blow to your ego. It's not easy to do,
100%.
right? You say,
100%.
what's wrong with this? And somebody finds 10 things that are wrong with it. You're going to feel like, oh, did I fail? But I think what it boils down to is changing your perspective. It's not a failure. I've just made myself stronger, more resilient, more robust. I made my work more robust against I've just made it more robust in general.
I love that. It's such a, I feel that so inherently. I love that growth mindset and willing to be coached, willing to take criticism, willing to learn, in the face of things that are that you hold dear in your work and in your findings and your
Yeah,
experimentation.
I'll say like one thing that I've had managers tell me this, multiple managers tell me this, but is Andrew's got strong opinions weakly held, and I don't know if that's meant as a compliment or as a constructive criticism, but I always take it as a compliment because I love having strong opinions because I've got to those strong opinions by doing what I believe to be a thorough analysis, right? And that's why I feel strongly about something. But they're weakly held because if somebody says, "Hey, actually, you didn't consider this," and you were missing this part of it, I'll be very quick to kind of go back on it. I think the challenge that I have is a pretty forward guy and pretty assertive guy, and so not I don't always invite, or I sometimes unintentionally uninvite that that dissent, which I don't ever want to do, and I try to clarify that as much as I can. I want people to prove me wrong, but I don't always come across that way. So it's something that
I
I
love that.
continue to work on.
I love that, dude. Love that EQ and self awareness and growth and being willing to acknowledge you when you bring a lot of intelligence and wins and research and facts to the table, it's understandable. And I love that concept of those strong opinions loosely held. Andrew, I've been just blown away and appreciative of your time today. For the audience out there that wants to look up Andrew Covato and all things where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to put more content on there. Just Andrew Covato, and of course, you're welcome to check out our website at growthbyscience.com for a flavor of kind of what we do in our approach. And yeah, if you hear anything on the podcast that you agree with, or more importantly, that you disagree with, I would love to hear from you. Please, shoot me a post on LinkedIn or a message or email, and I'd love to start a conversation.
Legend. Even in his sign off, he's soliciting dissent, living up to those cultural values. Andrew Covato, you're the man. Love the conversation and can't wait to get this out there. Talk soon.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Always.